Recording.
Great. My name is Mark Tony. I serve as chair of the Audit Committee, and I want to welcome everybody to the Audit Committee meeting of the State Bar. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. I want to start off by requesting that Audit Committee Deputy Coordinator Liz Izukiza take the roll, please.
Good morning. I'm Liz. I'm the program coordinator with Mission Advancement. I've been with the division for 6 months and with the State Bar for 3 years. I'm ready to take roll call whenever you are.
Yes. Thank you very much for introducing yourself, Liz. Would you please take the roll call?
Buenaventura. Momentarily out. Chen.
Present.
User.
Present.
Tony. Present. Quorum is established.
Thank you very much. I think the next thing we do is call for public comment. And what I'd like to know is if there's anybody who currently has signed up ahead of time for public comment.
We haven't had anyone sign up in advance, and we do not have any remote members of the public with their hands raised at this moment.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think in that case, we're able to move along to the next item on the agenda, which is the chair's report. And so there's a couple of things I'd like to do. One is to welcome back Trustee Chen to the Audit Committee. She and I have served on this committee together for the past few years. And also to welcome Trustee Huser to this committee. Thank you very much for agreeing to do this. And I will, when Trustee Buenaventura comes back, also welcome him to the committee. I do have a little bit of discussion for the oral report. And so I'm going to start off by saying I think that audit committees are one of the most important really functions of any organization. And I think that it's often underappreciated. I'm one of these people that likes to serve on audit committees for organizations. And in fact, I'm currently chairing the audit committee of the National Whistleblower Center. And so audits are something that I think are just very important. And what I wanted to do is to give you, just share a brief overview of what to expect from me as audit committee chair. And what I did is I went to the board policy manual for guidance, and I thought that's a good place to ground myself in. And I do want to thank Elizabeth Nolan for sending out this portion of the which is the charter for the audit committee portion of the board manual to each trustee who's on the audit committee. And there's a few things that I just want to read out loud that guide me. So the first thing is under charter for the audit committee. It says the audit committee is charged with assisting the board of trustees in fulfilling its oversight responsibility as related to the integrity of accounting and financial reporting processes, the system of internal controls, and audit processes. In addition, the audit committee is charged with overseeing risk management and compliance efforts. So that's kind of the overview. I'm not going to read through this whole thing, but there are a few things I want to point out that's in the board manual. The first is that the audit committee shall undertake the following responsibilities related to the annual audit statement, the annual financial statement audit. Recommend appointment of the external auditors, taking into account the recommendation of the executive director and chief financial officer for approval by the full board of trustees. Review and approve the annual audit scope and fees of the external auditors. Now, the reason I wanted to point that out is because in my tenure on the audit committee, it is only recently we had an auditing firm which had a 5-year contract, and it only recently expired this year. And I take this to mean that the audit committee should be a little bit more involved in reviewing the scope, reviewing, be a little bit more involved in the selection of the auditor. And so that is why I had recommended, and you'll see later on the agenda when we get to action items, that we extend for 1 year the current auditor and give ourselves a little bit of time as an audit committee to take a look at the request for proposal, the scope included in that. Take a little time, if not all of us, at least maybe a committee of 2 of us, to take a look at some of the proposals that come in and work with the staff in coming up with a recommendation. So that's one thing that, and I just want to provide that so you know that the reason that I think we should be more involved is related directly to what I'm reading on the board manual. It's not just me coming up with the idea on my own. Another thing I just want to point out, undertake the following responsibilities relating to cybersecurity. Recommend commission of a biannual cybersecurity report, taking into account the recommendation of the executive director and director of information technology to the full board of trustees for approval. Review and approve the biennial cybersecurity report scope and fees. So I think that's something else that you should expect to see on future agendas, is making sure that as an audit committee, we fulfill that duty as well. Another element that I would like to point out is, and I think we already have done this, review the results of the biennial performance audit conducted by the State Bureau of Audits. That's something we have done, and I think we need to continue to do it. And monitor, review, and evaluate the effectiveness and adequacy of the state bar's internal control structure on an ongoing basis, and to ensure that a review of the state bar budget and fiscal control policies and procedures are undertaken every 5 years by an independent consultant review. So I want to make sure that we kind of figure out where are we in that 5-year schedule? When was the last time we did it? And, is that something that comes up this year, next year, maybe a couple years from now? But just kind of a calendar. And the final thing is, and this is something that all committees have to do, develop and adopt a work plan, committee work plan, for approval by the board executive committee. We don't have that on the agenda today, and I think that's something that we can work on in January. I will be, planning to work in conjunction with staff to at least come up with a draft so that our time is well spent. So those are the elements I wanted to share with everybody. And I wanted to see before we moved on, if anyone has any questions, recommendations, or thoughts to share based upon my oral report. Okay, well, thank you everybody for your indulgence. I think the next thing I'd like to, the next thing on our agenda is approval of the September 21, 2023 open session minutes. So first I'd like to invite any questions anybody may have about the minutes of our last meeting. Okay. In that case, I would entertain a motion to adopt the minutes.
So moved.
Thank you, Trustee Chen. I would ask for a second. I won't call any names, Trustee Huser, but did I hear you making a second?
I cannot, I must abstain. I wasn't at the meeting, so apologies.
Then I will second it myself. Thank you for clarifying. I appreciate that. May we have a roll call, please?
Bonaventura, okay, he's not present. Chen,
Aye.
Huser,
Abstain, I was not at the meeting.
Tony,
Aye.
2 ayes, 1 absence, 1 abstention. The motion does not pass. Am I right?
The motion passes. It's
The motion passes.
Board Secretary.
Yes. Yes, the motion passes. Abstentions are
Is-
not counted as an affirmative vote. Liz.
Buenaventura still absent?
Trustee Buenaventura is not present at the moment.
Okay, so it passes. My mistake.
Okay, thank you. It can get confusing, but
Minutes are adopted.
it is the majority. Our rules that we adopted are the majority of those present and voting. So once the quorum has been established, that is what we've got. So thank you.
Got
I want to make a couple comments. One is I want to commend and appreciate Trustee Huser for her abstaining. It is absolutely appropriate to abstain on minutes when you are not present. So thank you for paying attention to that, Trustee Huser. That is absolutely a best practice, and I very much encourage that. I do the same, by the way. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Also, one of the things I forgot to say in the oral report is maybe not in January, but in general, it is my view that it is a better practice to have committee meetings not the same day as the board meeting, and to have them 3 or 4 weeks before board meetings. January is kind of tough because of the holidays, but after the January meeting, I will be asking that we meet separately. It just gives a little bit more time. But what it means is that if we meet separately, it means we will not have a second meeting at the board meeting. Okay, we will only have one in between, unless it's a special meeting to meet a deadline. That's different. But in general, I prefer the meetings to be to have some separation. So that's something to look forward to from me. Okay, I believe the next item on our agenda is we have a consent item, which is approval of Q3 board and management travel expenses. There was a spreadsheet as part of our agenda packet that listed all of those. And I just want to ask if anyone has any questions before we take up this item. Okay, well, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adopt our consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, I believe we had trustee User make the motion and trustee Chen seconded. May we have a roll call, please?
Bonaventura. Chen.
Aye.
Huser.
Aye.
Tony.
Aye.
3 ayes, 0 noes, no abstentions. The motion carries.
Great. I am sorry, for some reason I can't find my meeting agenda. Disappeared on me. So the next item I have is going to business. The recommendation of independent auditor services contract. And Justin, would you take the lead on that, please?
Yes, I will. I'll stand in for Araceli. I wanted to take time to mention that Elizabeth Nolan, I used to be the audit committee coordinator, and I've handed over the reins to Elizabeth Nolan to be the committee coordinator. So I just wanted to make sure that the committee was introduced to the new committee coordinator. I don't know if you want to say hi, Elizabeth.
We've been doing so. Please,
Hi,
Liz.
I'm the coordinator and Liz is the deputy.
Elizabeth, I don't know if it's just me, but there's a really loud reverberation.
Yeah.
Do you have this on in more than one screen? Do you have it on in more than one screen possibly, or a phone? Or?
No.
Okay. Well, welcome, Elizabeth. Now I'll get back to the audit committee agenda item. This item, Mark or trustee Chair Tony has talked about this item previously. This item is to allow our current auditors to conduct the audit for the fiscal year 2023. And as Chair Tony said, we will engage in a process to review the RFPs. We'll modify the RFP and send it back out for bid. And then the audit committee as a whole or a subset, maybe 2 members, will review those RFPs and work with staff to score them and ultimately make a recommendation to the full committee to select an external auditor for the next 5 years. So this agenda item is just seeking the committee's approval of that 1-year contract.
Thank you very much. I want to open it up to questions, to discussions. Okay. Well, hearing no questions or discussion, I will entertain a motion to adopt this.
So moved.
Thank you, trustee Huser made the motion.
Second.
Thank you, trustee Chen seconded. May I ask for the roll to be called?
Bonaventura. Chen.
Aye.
Huser.
Aye.
Tony.
Aye.
3 ayes, 0 noes, no abstentions. The motion carries.
Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is an overview of state bar audits. And I was, I believe, I'm sorry, who do we have doing that?
I think it was Elizabeth, but I believe she stepped out to try to resolve her echoing. So let's see.
Okay, I want to test out my audio and see if that's any better.
Yes.
Thank you.
And this is my item. Good morning, everyone. So State Bar staff assembled a list of audits conducted at the State Bar at the request of the chair of the Audit Committee. The purpose of the list is to document and track the required audits that happen on an ongoing basis. For context, the list of audits presented here are those that are either required by statute or those that have been recommended by external auditors, such as the California State Auditor, and incorporated into internal policy. The State Bar may conduct other performance and related audits internally, but those are not included in the list. And as a reminder, the agenda item is for discussion and presentation only. I'll pause here for any questions about the background and then ask the committee if they would like me to provide an overview of each of the audits.
Thank you very much for putting this together. I would like just a brief review of each one that's currently listed. You don't have to go through the year started authorizing or authority, but just basically, I think it'd be useful.
Yes, I'll give a brief overview of each audit. So the first is the annual required independent financial audit, which evaluates, among other required documents and areas, the financial statements and records of the State Bar. Next is the single audit, which is required of non-federal entities that expend more than $750,000 in a fiscal year. Because the State Bar receives federal funds through two other agencies, it is required to conduct this audit for the first time in 2023. Third is the audit conducted every 2 years by the California State Auditor, which has broad discretion to conduct audits of State Bar performance, data, and compliance. And then the final two audits in this list are random case audits of closed cases from the Office of Chief Trial Counsel and the Special Deputy Trial Counsel. These random case audits are provided by external independent contracted reviewers to assess performance of these two offices. Both audits were strongly recommended by past reports from the California State Auditor. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them, or if I'm unable to answer them, to follow up.
Questions, anybody?
So I have two questions. One concerns the mention in our committee charter of cybersecurity reports biennially, and my question is whether any of that is covered by any of these audits. And the second question concerns conflicts of interest, and in particular, conflicts of interest disclosures by board members, and whether review of compliance with those requirements is incorporated into any of these audits.
So I'll address the biennial report of the cybersecurity first. That is not, it is in the board policy manual, but it is not required under statute. And then second, the conflict of interest review, I'm unsure about that. I do want to point out that in the board policy manual, there is a 5-year review of internal controls, which Trustee Tony addressed at the beginning of this committee meeting. It may be covered under there, but I am not sure.
I would say about cybersecurity, it's not required by any statute or rule, but perhaps it should be added to this table, and it is a different, I think in the board policy manuals referred to as a report. I think we would all characterize that as an audit, so maybe that's a modification we can make to add that to the table. And then to your point, Hylin, we have not included in the scope of any of our internal controls reviews adherence to the conflicts policies, but as you know, that's changing. We have a lot more emphasis on it. So certainly if that's something the audit committee wants to see us do, we can pursue that. We are in fact auditing compliance and posting those results on our website now.
Trustee Chen, I very much appreciate those questions. And it's, I think this is part of what helps us get a big picture of at least what I think I'd like to see us do. I don't remember, but I do recall some review of cybersecurity discussions.
Yeah, we have reviewed it. We've had those reports presented to us
Yeah,
and we've
okay, so it's
discussed
not
them.
just
And
me.
it's just that, yeah.
I think it
So
may
I
be-
think,
MGO may have done a piece on that. So, and it might be, that's part of why I want to review the scope. Because I actually think that might be. So let's, we don't have to resolve that today, but I think it might already be. One question I have, first off, are there any other questions from other trustees? Okay. So it would be helpful for me to have a better understanding of what's the difference between the independent financial audit and the single audit. Maybe I not heard of the term single audit before. That'd be helpful.
Sure. So I am more familiar with the single audit. So the single audit is required by the Code of Federal Regulations. Any entity that is non-federal that receives federal funds, either directly as grants or as a pass-through agency, is required to conduct an additional audit for any fiscal year where that entity expends more than $750,000 in those federal funds. So it is beyond.
And is the single audit limited to the spending of the federal funds, or is it an entire organizational, or is it like a OMB A133 or whatever they call the federal audit?
It is a federal audit.
So it's the full audit, and it has to be done separately by a separate.
I want to pass this to Justin in case, because I believe he would have more information.
I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, the single audit is a requirement for the receipt of those funds, whereas like the financial statements audit is conducted on our financial statements by the independent auditors. And we contracted with MGO to do both of those audits this year, but they have different requirements.
But I think what he was asking is the single audit an audit of the entire financial statements or only an audit of the federal funds, which
The
are
the federal funds is what the single audit is referencing.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Huber. That clarification was very helpful to me. And it then feels that, yes, it maybe that's why it's called a single audit, because it's focused. So that's fine with me. And
Chair Tony, the IT security assessment, why it seems so familiar to those that have been on audit before, is part of the work plan. We call it an assessment. We don't necessarily call it an audit, but it's required, or on the audit committee's work plan, it happens every 2 years.
okay. And who conducts that? Who has conducted that?
I'd have to get back to you. Off the top of my head, I think we contract with an outside entity to come in and review our IT security systems.
We do, and we do. It's not our same financial statement auditors. But
No.
I think what you're referring to, Trustee Tony, is the fact that in the financial statement audit and in the single audit, there were findings related to IT as they relate to finance related issues, but that's separate from the more comprehensive cybersecurity assessment.
Right. And a lot of those findings came from the internal controls audit that we were conducted this year, which we conduct every 5 years. And the internal controls audit had findings related to IT that were incorporated into the financial statements and the single audit.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. Other questions trustees may have? I very much appreciate in my conversations, Elizabeth, you following up with putting this together for us, for the committee. What I'd like to ask is, as we develop this, maybe you know, you can go ahead and add the 5-year one on here. And then the only other information I would find useful is who currently is the contractor for each of these audits, or who we hire, and just what the sticker price is. I think it's useful for us to know, and it's useful for our agencies that we're accountable to also know how seriously we take our auditing functions, and in terms of the resources that we put into it. And ideally, doesn't have to be immediately, I view the cost centers as two ways. One is, how much is the cost of the contract, the third-party contractor, and how much is the staff, our staffing time, cost allocation, because that's what reflects a true cost. And I know that the State Bar is putting a great deal, as it should, of resources into accountability and audit. And I think it's of value for people who aren't on the inside to know about it. So I really appreciate it very much. This is a great step in that direction.
Yes, we will get back to you with that information when we can.
Okay, perfect. If we can have it for January's meeting, that'd be wonderful. So thank you very much. So let me go ahead and go back to our agenda. I have too many windows open here. All right. Audit committee. To that. So I think we're close to the end of our agenda. I wanted to ask if anybody had any other questions or comments before we adjourn this committee meeting. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I will declare this meeting